Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Carrie Foster. This is Lisa Haig, and we are your son's college counselors. But tonight we are here to introduce a colleague and friend of ours. Sandy Neal is the Associate Director of Financial Aid at Spalding University, and she has been doing these financial aid evenings for years for us. So welcome back, Sandy, and thanks again. And we're going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay, thank you all for coming, and thank you guys for having me here. Let me share my screen with you all real fast and we'll get started. We're going to go over let's see, there it is. And we're going to go over the financial aid or how to apply for financial aid. So we're going to go over this in several steps. The first thing we'll do is talk about what is financial aid. Then we'll talk about how you apply. And then we'll talk about after that, what happens after you apply. At any time, if you have questions, we'll maybe try to put it in the chat box or we'll answer anything we can afterwards. If you have private stuff, you may want to wait and maybe I'll share with you all my email address and my phone number, and you can ask private information that you don't want to share with everybody by just calling me or emailing me so that you don't share your personal information. So the information we're going to go over tonight is for anybody that's going to go to school anywhere in the United States. I do represent Spalding, but the information I provide is not pertaining just to Spalding. It applies to every school in the United States. So basically, what is financial aid? Financial aid is any money that comes from sources other than the family to pay for post-secondary educational expenses. So it comes in the forms of scholarships, grants, loans, and employment opportunities. So the sources of financial aid come from the federal government, which is the largest provider of financial aid. They provide the Pell Grant money and student loans. Then our state, other states, many states provide money to students. The state of Kentucky is very lucky. We have KEYS money. We have the College Access Program, which is we call our CAP grant. And then we have Kentucky Tuition Grant as a grant to be used at private schools. But there's other programs that the state offers as well for teachers and other things. So, and if you don't want to go into post-secondary education, there's Work Ready scholarship money that's available through them. I'll actually talk mostly about college and university stuff, but if you want more information about Work Ready, if you want to contact me, I'll let you know about that. Then colleges and universities. So every college and university offers some type of financial aid to help a student go through school, at least the four-year schools and above. Some two-year schools will, but mostly at the larger schools. And then there's private sources. So these are sources like the Community Foundation of Louisville, or Rotary Club, or Lions Club, or your church. Any of those things, they may provide financial aid to students. And then the employers, sometimes students and parents' employers provide scholarship opportunities or some kind of tuition remission in order to help pay for school. So types of financial aid, there's two types. They fall into two categories. One is self-help and one is gift aid. Self-help is loans or work employment. Work study employment. That's money that you actually have to do something to get. So loans, you pay those back after the student graduates, or you have work employment, work study employment, where the student works a job in between their classes and then they get a paycheck every 2 weeks, usually, sometimes once a month, but usually every 2 weeks. And then gift aid is scholarships and grants that are offered, scholarships from the school or outside sources, or grants that are offered from the federal and state governments. So we'll talk a little bit about scholarships. I like to talk about the private scholarships first. Private scholarships are money that comes from sources that are outside of the school. There's free scholarship searches for students that they can go out and look for scholarships themselves. Now is the time to start doing that. You can write essays and apply. One of the best ones, I think, is fastweb.com. Or there's the College Board. It's called Big Futures, collegeboard.org. They're all scholarship searches. You can just go in and Google free scholarship searches and you'll find many of them, but they're usually the same basically It's just a search engine to find all the scholarships that are available. So basically all doing the same things. One thing I want to point out, when I talk about free scholarship searches, I mean free. Do not pay anybody to pay for a scholarship search. Basically what those people are doing is they're crowdfunding a scholarship. And so you're paying $50, $150, and they'll award one scholarship, and they're taking your money and paying that scholarship, and they're pocketing half of it. So don't do that. If it's free, it shouldn't cost a penny. And there's a lot of reputable places that offer scholarships. The high school counselors can give you information about scholarships that are available to students in Kentucky and the Louisville area. And then again, the parent or student's employer, sometimes they offer scholarships. It never hurts to ask your employer. They may have never thought about that, and it could be a good, great employee benefit. And then organizations to which you belong or your student belongs. If they're a gold Eagle Scout for boys, if they are an Eagle Scout, maybe there's a scholarship that will be offered at a school for an Eagle Scout. Or if the student is, or the parent is involved in Rotary Club or Lions Club or any kind of organization like that, they may offer scholarships, so just ask. For institutional scholarships and grants, and when I talk about institutional grants, that means money that's going to come from the college that the student's going to apply to. First of all, you would apply for admissions to that college. So apply to the colleges the student wants to attend, have the student apply, visit the campus, apply, and then ask the admissions office if there's a separate scholarship application. Most do not require a separate application. Usually it's your admissions application, and they just, put the students in a pool, and they see, what they can offer to each student that applies. Or then also ask if there's a separate financial aid application. Most schools only use the free application for federal student aid, the Fafsa, but some schools will require the CSS profile. There's not any schools in the state of Kentucky that require the CSS profile. Usually that's private schools out of state. I think Xavier does. I know Vanderbilt does. So you might want to ask, if you're looking at an out-of-state school, if they also require the CSS profile plus the Fafsa. And then you can ask the school if there's any scholarships in the department that the student plans to major in. So if they're going to be a biology major, you may want to ask if there's a biology scholarship. Or if they're going to be art, music, there's art scholarships, there's music scholarships, and they usually have to store a portfolio for art. They have to audition for the music scholarships, but ask about those. And then consider ROTC. So ROTC students usually can go take an ROTC class the first year. They get some money for it. And then after the second year, there's an obligation, if they keep on receiving money from ROTC, to enlist and join in the military. So, but the first year they give you a chance to even see if that's something the student wants to do. The Kentucky Educational Excellence Scholarship, or the KEYS money, is money your sons have been earning since they were a freshman in high school. You should actually have been receiving information from KEA, who administers it. It's money, merit scholarship money. It's funded by the Kentucky Lottery proceeds. It's based on the high school GPA and the ACT score the student has. And most schools now are ACT optional, but if you want those funds, go on and have your student take the ACT, because they get a bonus for that. And some school scholarships also offer a bonus for ACT. So, we want to ask about that as well. The KEYS money is available to Kentucky residents only who graduate from a certified Kentucky high school and attend a Kentucky institution. So they want to keep the money in state and keep the best and brightest in the state of Kentucky. However, if we have a program, or the student wants to pursue a program that we do not offer in the state of Kentucky, they can take the money out of state if it's one of those programs. They have to apply through the academic common market, and then the student can use that money. Typically, it's for marine biology. It's what most students will go to out of the state of Kentucky, and that's usually in Florida or in South Carolina. The maximum award for the GPA is $2,000, and that's for a 4.0. So if a student had a 4.0 all 4 years in high school, they would come out with $2,000. And then they have an ACT bonus. The maximum would be $500. The AP and IB test bonuses are not given to students in private schools because it's for free and reduced lunch students. It's available for 8 semesters. So it's available their freshman year, their sophomore year, their junior year, and their senior year, as long as they maintain a GPA of a 3.0 or better. Students can receive it after their freshman year if they do not have a 3.0, but it's really hard to get the GPA back up to a 3.0 if it goes below that. So encourage your student to maintain that 3.0. It's administered by Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. It's kia.com. And again, they should have already been sending you information about the KEY scholarship. So college costs, let's talk a little bit about college cost. The cost of attendance at a college or university, there's 2 types. Is direct cost, which is money that's paid directly to the school for your student to attend. And there's indirect costs like books and other living expenses and transportation that the student will have regardless of whether they were a student. You combine those 2 together to come up with the total cost of attendance. So direct costs would be tuition and fees. And if the student's living on campus in a residence hall, that would be included in the cost of a meal plan for living on campus. Now, a lot of schools have a commuter meal plan as well. It's a lot smaller than the cost of living on campus meal plan, but some schools do have a commuter meal plan that students are required to take. Then the indirect cost, again, is the books and allowance for books and supplies. And then there's a personal expense allowance. It allows students a few meals out and other personal expenses that they may have. And then there's a transportation cost to get back and forth to school. Even if they're living on campus, there's a transportation cost included in their total cost of attendance. When admissions talks about cost of attendance, they're only going to talk about the direct cost. But financial aid includes total cost so that financial aid can try to meet that total cost if the student needs it. It can also include study abroad costs, dependent and elder care expenses if a student has that. Not a family, but a student, that would mostly be an independent student that would have those. Expenses associated with a disability. So if a student has any kind of disability and they need special accommodations, that would be included in the cost of attendance. And then expenses for cooperative education programs. If a student's going into a program that requires a co-op program, it does cost to travel to that. Usually they're out of state. And so that can be included in the cost of attendance. So let's talk about published cost. So the published cost represents the true cost of the college or university. So that's not true. If you look at somebody's cost and it says it's $30,000 to attend there, that is not the true cost of the cost of attendance. Really what it is the net price that you're looking for. How much are you going to have to pay for out of pocket for your child to attend school? After all scholarships and grants and everything else that they're eligible, loans, everything that they're eligible to receive, after that pays, what is the net price to you that you need to worry about? So every school in the United States are required to have something called a net price calculator. And so the net price calculator allows you to calculate how much it's going to cost to attend that school. Since we're so close to October 1st and getting ready for the Fafsa to open, you'll know most of that stuff. This is really good for juniors, sophomores and juniors. The net price calculator, basically you put information in about your student, their GPA, your income, and it'll tell you what that school can basically offer to that student. Spalding has, there's Spalding up there, there's Bellarmine. Western, I put the community colleges up there, and then UK and U of L. So like I said, every school has one. If you can't find it on the front page, if you just type in the search net price calculator, you'll be able to find it. So need-based financial aid. What is need-based financial aid? Need-based financial aid is money that, or what is financial need, excuse me. Financial need is the cost of attendance that we just talked about, minus the expected family contribution, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, gives you financial need. And financial aid tries to meet that need with the programs we have available. So the expected family contribution, it comes from the free application for federal student aid, and it measures the students' and families' ability to pay for post-secondary education. There's a student contribution and there's a parent contribution if the student's a dependent student. Sometimes your contribution is zero. And in future years, in 2 years now, it could be a negative number. So some people are not expected to contribute anything towards their college education because they're high need students. The expected family contribution is a number that is used to determine the eligibility for federal and state student financial aid. Some institutions use it to divvy out their institutional aid. And again, the number is calculated from the free application for federal student aid. It's based on the information that you put on the free application. And after you complete the free application for federal student aid or FAFSA, you get something back called a student aid report. And it just tells you what your expected family contribution is. And it breaks down all the information that you put on it, the FAFSA. So need varies based on the cost and aid amount. So if you're looking at the chart, number 1, 2, and 3, number 1 would be private, all the private schools in Kentucky. And I would probably even add UK and U of L in there. 2 would probably be, if you're looking at our comprehensive universities, such as Eastern and Moorhead and Murray and Western. Those would be put in there, or Northern. And 3 would be the community college system in Kentucky. So their costs are going to be different in each one of those schools. But regardless of where your student goes, their expected family contribution does not change. So if the student stays in state, it's the same. If they go out of state, it's going to be the same. But your need is going to be variable based on the cost of attendance, because the cost is variable. So for example, if you have like number 1, the cost of attendance is $15,000 and your expected family contribution is $5,000. So your need is going to be $10,000 at that school. Same thing with number 2. If the cost was $10,000, your expected family contribution doesn't change, $5,000, then your need would be $5,000 at that school. And at the community college system, your need may be 0 for need-based aid, but there's other financial aid like scholarships and institutional money that then isn't based on that need, or unsubsidized student loans, which is not a need-based program. So state grant programs. In the state, we have the College Access Program, and this year it went up significantly. It's $5,300 this year, which is really good. It covers pretty much the community college tuition rate. The Kentucky Tuition Grant, which provides access to private institutions, pays up to $3,200 a year. And it's based on need, but it's really unmet need. It's not need-based as far as the CAP grant is. You have to be a Pell Grant recipient in order to receive the College Access Program, but you just have to have need in order to receive the Kentucky Tuition Grant. So it's a little different. A student that's going to a private institution, if they're eligible for CAP grant and Kentucky Tuition Grant, they can take it to a private institution. If they're going to a public institution, the only thing that they would qualify for would be the CAP grant. Federal grant programs or federal aid programs that are available to students is the federal Pell Grant. The maximum award this year is $68.95. It went up $400 from last year. That's the current award. It'll be a new figure for next year. There's additional funds for summer. So a student can use Pell Grants for the fall, spring, and summer. And then there's the Teach Grant. A Teach Grant is a $4,000 per year grant. I like to call it a loan, because if the student does not teach in a Title I school, a high need area, then it reverts back to a loan. But if they do teach in a Title I school in a high need area, it would remain a grant. And after so many years of teaching, it's forgiven. A Title I school is any public institution in the state. Any public school in the state of Kentucky is a Title I school, and that's primary and secondary school. High need areas could be math, science, English as a second language, reading tutors. Some schools it is art, music, and PE. It all depends on the school and what they really need. Other federal programs include something called campus-based programs. Now the Pell Grant can be taken, if you're awarded a Pell Grant, it can go to any school. But campus-based programs are awarded at the school the student applies to, and it can't be portable. It's only good at that one school that offers it. It's because the money's allocated just to that school to award to their students. It's federal work study, and that's a job the student works in between their classes. They do have to work, and they receive a paycheck basically every 2 weeks. It typically goes to them. Some schools will allow it to pay their tuition, but typically it goes to the student, and then they can take it and use it for their tuition if they need to do that, or for living expenses. The amount, they have to pay at least minimum wage. I will tell you, most of them pay more than minimum wage, because to get students to work nowadays, you need to pay more than minimum wage. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is also a campus-based program, and it's awarded at some schools just $500 a year. Some schools it's $2,000. It just depends on how much money they have, and it is a campus-based program, only good at that school that awarded it. So if you want to know more information about all the types of federal financial aid, if you go to studentaid.ed.gov, studentaid.gov, you should be able to find the information there. Federal loan programs. The federal loan program is the WMD4 direct loan program. They're subsidized, meaning the government's paying the interest while the student's in school. It's a need-based program. That's need-based. Unsubsidized means the government's not paying the interest while the student in school. Anybody can get an unsubsidized student loan. If you make $1 million a year, your student could get an unsubsidized student loan. And the PLUS loan is the parent loan for undergraduate students. It's money that the parents take out to apply for the student. And it is not based on need either. It's based on cost of attendance. The current rate for the subsidized and unsubsidized student loan for undergraduate students is 4.99%. It did rise this year. I suspect, though, that it will go down in the next year, especially with all the stuff that's been going on with student loans the last few weeks, last month in the media and, you know, forgiving loans and those kind of things. I really do suspect that they will revamp the whole student loan program and make it more affordable and more reasonable for everybody. Again, studentaid.ed.gov for more information on those. The interest rate on the student loans, the parent loan is 7.54%. So you can see that it's a little high, but again, it went up from last year. For more info, well, the interest rate, this is not for you guys. This current students or college this year. Next year, the interest rate will be set on July 1, or that's what's typically been done. And then you'll know what the interest rate is then for those. And again, you can look for the requirements on that. So the truth about student loans. So a lot of people have read that student loans are students are borrowing over $100,000 for their education. And the big picture is that only about 4% of the individuals with outstanding student loan debt owe more than $100,000. And most of those students, and this goes back to 2013, but it's still true today, most pursued advanced degrees, doctors, lawyers, dentists, engineering, higher, you know, the EDDs, PhDs. So the average student does not owe that. It's only 4% of the population that do. So when we talk about student loans also, the average debt in the state of Kentucky so far in 2022 is $33,300. It went up slightly from last year. But the average price of a new car, a non-luxury new car, in May, according to the Kelley Blue Book value, it was $43,338. Now, the difference between those two, besides being $10,000 cheaper for a college education, is that one's good debt and one's bad debt. So a college education appreciates over time, where a car depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot. So, and people are paying those off in 4 and 5 and 6 years. For a student loan, you have 10 years to pay it back, and it can be forgiven for certain things, and especially like public service. There's a public service loan forgiveness. So the free application for federal student aid is what we're talking about really tonight. That's how you get financial aid money. It collects demographic and financial information for the family, the student, and the parents. The information is used to calculate the expected family contribution. Colleges use that expected family contribution to award aid. It's available in both English and Spanish. It may be filled out anytime during the academic year, meaning for next year, but no earlier than October 1st, prior to the academic year for which the student requests aid. So for your students, the first time they can fill it out is October 1st, 2022. Do not try to get a head start and do it before then, because it's not going to do you any good. You would be filling out the 22-23 application. They will not open the 23-24 application until midnight on October 1st, or 12:01 October 1st. Usually is when it opens. And colleges may set a priority deadline for filing the FAFSA. So if you want to check with the school that the students are planning to enroll, see what their deadline date is. Most don't have a deadline date, but really in the state of Kentucky, we want you to do this early as possible so that you can be considered for any state grant programs just in case they run out. The state grant program has not run out in a lot of years. We are very fortunate in Kentucky to have lottery that is funding those. It's not your taxpayers' money. Lottery money is paying for these grants and scholarship grant programs through the state and the Key Scholarship. So the one thing you can do before October 1st is you can apply for an Fsa Id. So the student needs one and the parent needs one. Parents, if you have one for another sibling that's already in college, you don't need another Fsa Id. That is still good. It is good for your life. It never has to be renewed. If you forget the password, you'll have to do it, or if you don't use it for several years, you may have to renew it, but it's still your same password. And the student has to have one. You need to create it using a unique phone number or email address, and do not use St. X's email address for your student, because the student needs to create theirs. You're supposed to be, only the owner should create an Fsa Id. So don't use the St. X email address to create one, create a different one to do it, and a unique phone number if they go by their cell phone number. And it matches to the social security number and date of birth. So the parent and the student cannot share an email address. It will only create for one. You do it, and you should have you can download the printouts that I sent off of the handouts that I sent to them. But it's studentaid.gov Fsa Id create account launch. If you just type in an Fsa Id or go to fafsa.gov, www.fafsa.gov, and you will see a link that says create a Fsa Id account, and that's what it looks like when you go. So the way you can complete the Fafsa this year, you can do Fafsa on the web. There's a paper or a PDF Fafsa. I would not encourage anybody to do that. Fafsa on the phone, I've only known one person to ever do that, and then they did it. And then there's FAA access to CPS online. That's if the school has to help them complete it because of some special circumstance. Schools use that. They used to have an FSA mobile app. They got rid of it because nobody was using it, or I'm not gonna say nobody, but very few people were using it, and so they didn't see the need to keep it around. Most people are using it on the web. The benefits of using Fafsa on the web: there's a more timely submission of original application and any necessary corrections. So when you submit it, it's not really, it looks like it's instantaneous to you, but it really is not instantaneous. The school has to go in and pull the information down from the federal government. They put it in a folder for us and we pull it from them. But it is faster to do. And if you have to make corrections, it's easier to do that way. There's really detailed instructions and help for common questions. So if you get on a question and you don't know what the answer, how to answer it, if you click on the little question mark help box, it will tell you where to find that information on your taxes or what it means, anything about that. You can check the application status online, so you can always go back in and it'll tell you if it's processing or if it's been completed and sent. And in the future, there's simplified application processes with that. So once you complete a FAFSA, the next year it should transfer over. When you go back in, you can be a continuing person and the information will be there. And you just need to update information like you're in college for the student and tax information for the next year. Also, if you have other siblings that you're filling out a FAFSA for, once you fill out one, the parents' information can be transferred to other siblings. So it makes it a little easier. Important FAFSA information to know. So who is a parent? The parent is the biological parents. And if they're married, that's who together still, that's whose information goes on the FAFSA. If the student is adopted, their adopted parents go on the FAFSA. If there's step parents involved, so if the biological parents are divorced and the child lives with the mom and she's remarried, the step parents, the mom and the stepdad's information will go on the FAFSA. People who are not parents or foster parents, legal guardians, other relatives, and like grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, or brothers and sisters are not considered parents for the FAFSA. If there's any kind of special circumstance, they should be discussed with the financial aid office that the student is planning to attend before they fill out the FAFSA. Or if they already fill out the FAFSA, they should check with the financial aid office once they make a decision on what school they're going to go to. So documentation that you might need to fill out the FAFSA, you're going to need a social security card for the student and the parent. And the reason why I say that is because you need to put the information on the FAFSA with your social security card. It needs to match exactly because there's a match with Social Security Administration. So if your social security, like I always tell everybody, my son's name is Ian Cody Neal. On his social security card, it says Ian Neal, ENC Neal. That's how he needs to fill out his FAFSA. He goes by Cody, He always has gone by Cody, but he can't fill out the FAFSA saying Cody Neal. It has to say Ian and it has to match his social security card. Driver's license, just to see the driver's license number. If you don't have that, that's not a big deal. It's not used anymore really for anything. I'm not sure why they haven't removed it, but they just haven't. Any W-2 forms and other records of money earned. The 2021 federal tax return, so it uses prior year information. So 2021 federal tax returns are going to use to fill out the FAFSA. You filed them on April 18th of 2022, or the best way to do it, if you filed a married joint tax return, you can use the IRS data retrieval tool, and it will put the information in for you, and you don't have to put anything in. So other information such as your current bank statements, businesses, farms, and investment mortgage information. When I talk about a farm, it's not the farm somebody lives on, it's an investment farm. Stocks, bonds, and other investment records. They're going to ask information about that. You may need to put that on the FAFSA. So where do you find the FAFSA? You go to www.fafsa.gov. When you do that, it looks like this. And you're going to see it's not your specific here, but it's going to say you're going to start a new FAFSA. You're going to click on that. And when you click on that, it'll ask you if you're the student or the parent, and then you'll want to do the 23-24 FAFSA when you do that. If you need to go back in for corrections after you complete the 23-24 FAFSA, you can return the same place and you would log in as a returning user. So general information they're going to ask: social security number of at least one parent and the student, citizenship status, the student and parent's marital status. Then they ask for the education level completed by mother and father or parent 1 and parent 2. That's just for some states offer a first generation college, and it's to keep track on the number of students that are going to college that are first gen. They ask about dependency questions. So they'll ask you, if you were born before a certain date, they have dependent children, if they're married. All no responses to that, those questions. The student is a dependent student and parents' information has to go on the FAFSA. I would suspect 99.99% of the people at St. X will be providing parental data on the FAFSA. Whose information should you provide on the FAFSA? So if the parents live together, married or unmarried, biological parents, if they live together, married or unmarried, put both parents' information on the FAFSA. If the parents are divorced or separated, and the student lives with one parent more than the other, then they use the parent who the student lives with the most. I get this a lot, that parents are separated, divorced, and the student lives equally with both parents. It then reverts to the parent who provides the most financial support for the student for the last year. So, and again, if the parent is remarried, on either one of those cases, the step parent also goes on the FAFSA. And then if the student was legally adopted, then they would use their adopted parents' information on the FAFSA. Dependent students, you're going to have tax information, income, and other financial information that you're going to need to have. It asks about dislocated worker status. That just means if you lost your job and you were dislocated out of employment. That happened a lot in 2020, some in 2021. We're not seeing it as much now. Receipt of means tested federal benefits for the previous 2 years. If you were on SNAP benefits or any of those kind of things, it's going to ask about that. Assets, all the assets we talked about, and then other untaxed income. That's the addition there. Additional information it's going to ask on the FAFSA is the colleges. So the student's going to can list up to 10 colleges that they want this information to go to, and it will go to all 10. Once you start getting information back from schools, I would try to narrow those 10 down to just a few, because the student's going to get bombarded with lots of information for all these different colleges. If the student finds that those 10, there's another one they want to add, they can add another school at any time, but one drops off. So eventually it can only stay at 10. If you do the paper FAFSA, you can only do 4. They want to know what the students' housing plans are. Are they going to live on campus or off campus? And then it asks you if there's a preparer. Did somebody prepare the FAFSA for you? That is only if you paid somebody to fill out a FAFSA. The parent is not a preparer. The student's not a preparer. A financial aid administrator is not a preparer, because they're not going to fill it out for you. They're going to tell you how to fill it out. They're not going to fill it out for you. Other things that are required, you're going to require the signatures, the student signature and one parent signature for dependent students. You're going to sign it hopefully electronically by using your Fsa Id. If you do or you can submit a signature page. What happens then? You can submit the FAFSA electronically, and then they'll have you to print off a signature page. It takes up to 20 days to match that up. So it's best to use the Fsa Id to sign. If you use a paper FAFSA, you're going to mail that in and you're going to sign it with a wet signature on that. The IRS data retrieval tool. So I talked about that, and you'll see that when you get into the FAFSA, and it says, do you want to transfer information from your tax return into your FAFSA data so that it gets to the income, the student section and the parent section. So if the student worked and they filed taxes, they can use the IRS data retrieval tool, and the parents can use it. So, but certain tax filers can't use it. If you did not indicate on the FAFSA that the tax return was complete, you won't be able to use an IRS data retrieval tool. If the marriage date for the parent is January 22nd or later, so if the parents are divorced and they just got married, you're not going to be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool, because more than likely they filed 2 separate tax returns and they currently cannot combine 2 tax returns. If the first 3 digits of a social security number is 666, there are people with that. They're from Micronesia and those kinds, so they can't use the IRS data retrieval tool. If the parents or student filed a non-federal, non-US tax return, they can't use it. Neither parent entered a valid social security number, so you have to have valid social security numbers in order to use it. And if parents use all zeros, they can't use the IRS data retrieval tool. But like I said, it makes it so much easier if you use that, because if you don't, you're going to have to manually enter all your tax information. But with using the IRS data retrieval tool, it populates it in. When you put that in there and you go out to the IRS page and link it back, you're not going to see information there. Only thing you're going to see is information was transferred from IRS. And that is a security feature that they put in place so that the tax information can't be stolen from you as it's transferring over. So, but know that it did work as long as it says it was transferred from the IRS. You then would go in and split out the parent's income, what parent 1 made at work and what parent 2 made for work, because there is a working person's allowance to split out the income. It does help. Additional information for the FAFSA that you should know, and this is not in order if you have the handle. I moved this. So if there's anybody that has a 529 or a Coverdell Educational Savings Plan program, it's reported as an asset of the owner. So if it's in the student's name and they're the owner, it's reported as their asset. If it's in the parent's name, then it's reported as a parent's asset. Or if the grandparents took it out, it's not reported anywhere on the FAFSA. It's reported differently once you take it out. But if the grandparents took it out in your child's name, it doesn't have to get reported anywhere on the FAFSA. The home value is never reported on the FAFSA. So your home that you're living in, nothing will ask that. However, we'll get down and talk about the CSS profile. And the CSS, if you have to do a CSS profile for another private school out of state, they're going to ask a lot more information than the FAFSA does. Rental properties are an asset. You do have to include those. Farms that students live on, parents live on, are not reported. But if it's a working farm that nobody lives on, it does have to be reported. Virtual currency, such as Bitcoin, is an asset and is reported in US dollars. Family-owned and controlled small businesses with less than 100 employees or fewer, they don't have to report that as an asset on the FAFSA. Trust funds are reported, and you do not report any untaxed Social Security benefits. So the taxed Social Security benefits is on your tax return. That would get reported. But if there's any part of it that's untaxed, you do not report it on the FAFSA at all. Common errors that people make. So when you're filling out the FAFSA, what happens sometimes is incomplete or inaccurate information. Make sure you use the full name as it appears on the Social Security card number for both the parent and the student. Don't submit the FAFSA before October 1st of 2022, because it's not going to help by getting a jump on it. not submitting required forms by priority deadlines, filing deadlines. So if there's any other required forms, the school is going to ask you for those. And if you don't submit them in a timely fashion, it could delay your financial aid. And you want to make sure that you get all that in place. So what happens after you file the FAFSA? So when you enter it on the computer, it goes to a place called the Central Processing System, that's CPS. So the student submits it to CPS. CPS then submits the information, calculates the EFC. They submit the information back to the student. They submit it down to the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, and they submit it to the school. KIA reports information to the school if the student's eligible for state grants, and back to the student if they are eligible for state grants. And if any corrections have to be made, that whole process happens all over again. So that's a cycle that happens all the time. And so you see it is instantaneous as it looks, because there are processes that happen behind the scenes. So if you put an email address on the FAFSA, so they'll ask you for your email address or the student's email address. If you do that, they're going to send you a notification back called your SAR, and it's going to be provided to you electronically. It's going to give you a link to go out and check the student aid report out. It only stays in your mailbox for a short number of days for security purposes, and then it will disappear. But you can always go back into the FAFSA and get it. And what the student aid report does, it basically tells you all the information that you put on the FAFSA. It's your chance to look it over, make sure everything's correct. If it's not correct, then you would want to change it, or you could contact the school and ask them to help you with that, because they may be able to help you, and they may actually want to make the corrections themselves. Additional requirements for some schools, you've heard me talk about the CSS profile. There's a lot of colleges out there that want it. It's for their scholarships, and scholarship organizations use it too. But it's how places like Harvard and Vanderbilt spend their institutional funds. They want to give it to the neediest students first. So that's how they do it. But needy is different at one of those bigger schools. There's an initial application fee of $25 unless you make less than, if you make $100,000 or less, then there's not an application fee at all. It's free, one's free, but additional reports are $16 each. So one application goes to one school. If you go to 10 schools, then you're going to pay $16 for 9 schools to get that information. Typically that doesn't happen. Usually it's 1 or 2 schools that you're going to send the CSS profile to. If you just type in CSS profile, you'll be able to get the information on it, and it'll tell you. But again, check with the school, with the students planning to enroll, to see if they need the CSS profile or if they just use the FAFSA. So what do you do with the student aid report? With your student aid report, again, you check the accuracy of it, make sure everything's okay. If something has to be made, you make the corrections, and then an expected family contribution is recalculated. And then you get a new student aid report, the school gets new information, the state agency will get new information. And again, your student aid report will go back to you in the student. Verification. So verification is just a random number of applicants are selected for this process. It's just the government's way of checking that everything's correct. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means randomly they check some people to see if they're filling out the FAFSA properly. And it just confirms the information on the FAFSA that it's right. The school will let you know if you're selected for verification. The student aid report tells you that you're selected for verification. If you use the IRS data retrieval tool for the FAFSA, verification is much easier because you don't have to turn any tax information in. It's already going to be there because it says transfer from the IRS and not changed. And so you don't have to do anything else. The role of financial aid office verifies the records. So if you're selected for verification, we make sure the information is correct. And if it's not correct, we fix it and send it back, and the whole process goes again. We award financial aid, and we'll send out a financial aid notification. Schools are sending those out very early. So usually in November, financial aid notifications start getting sent. If there's any kind of special circumstance, it's called professional judgment. That's the school's responsibility. So the financial aid form just collects information as it is on the FAFSA using your income from 2021. Well, 21, 22, and 23 could be totally different. And so if that is changed, if there's a reduction in income, there's a loss of child support, there's a loss of Social Security benefits, that's a special circumstance, and you'd want to talk to a financial aid office about that. special circumstances or conditions that exist that cannot be documented with a FAFSA, because like I said, it's just generic for everybody, meant to fit everybody. So there's a reason why schools are given this authority to be able to look at it a little differently. If you have a special circumstance, you'll want to send a written explanation and documentation to the financial aid office at the college of your child's choice, and they will tell you what other documentation you need. Basically, if you just say something about I have a special circumstance, they'll usually tell you exactly what to send in. The college will review the request, and then they'll ask for any additional documentation that they may find necessary to make a decision. And decisions are final at the school. They cannot even be appealed to the U.S. Department of Education. A financial aid director's decision on that is final. And you can find that different schools come up with different opinions because it is basically professional judgment and how they go about doing it. Things that are considered special circumstances and unusual and uncovered medical and dental expenses, a parent or a spouse death, loss of employment, extraordinary dependent care expenses, if there's a divorce, secondary school tuition. If you're paying tuition for your child's siblings, if they're going to St. X or any other parochial school, then you definitely want to talk to the financial aid office and tell them that the student's going there. If the students cannot obtain parental information for some reason, then that's a special circumstance that you would want to reach out to the financial aid office and let them know those things. We hope you will join us in becoming an Eagle on the FAFSA. Our school code is 001-1960. If you want to look at other schools, when you fill out the FAFSA, you'll just list either the name of the school or you can search for the school code. That's what you'll put in. And so there, U of L's is 1999. And that's the only one I can remember because I went to school at U of L and it stays the same. So, but anyway, you can list any school you want. You can find the school codes. They're just listed. If you need more help, don't be afraid to call the college or university of your choice for your help. I'll be happy to help you if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable asking tonight. My direct number is 502-873-4327, or you can email me, and it's SNEEL, so it's Neal, Spalding.edu, and Spalding is SPALDING. There's no U in Spalding. So you can contact me, even if you're not planning to go to Spalding. I'll be happy to answer any questions. It's just a thing that we do as financial aid administrators. So good luck to your student with their educational goals, and we'll close this and I'll stop sharing and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have if you all want to stick around for questions. If I can get back to it. There we go.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm trying
You
to
are
see,
welcome.
yeah, if anybody has any, feel free to unmute and ask a question, or you can type an email in the chat and I can share it for sure. So somebody just asked if they could type an email here. Absolutely. Oh, can you type her email here? Can you type?
Yes.
Yes. So we can do that too.
Yeah, let me get into where I can do that, because
Okay, thank you.
I'm having an issue of trying to find it.
And feel free, if anybody has any questions, you can unmute and ask your question. Or like I said, if you type it into the chat, we can certainly share that question aloud so everybody can hear.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Hi, I was just wondering from the beginning of the talk when you mentioned keys money and submitting ACT scores, is there a certain score that will get you an advanced allotment, or how does that work? I might have missed that.
Okay, so for keys, the ACT starts at 15. So a 15 and above gets some money. 15 gets you maybe, I'm looking at it, I've got a poster on my board. I think it says $60 something, but every penny counts. So yeah, regardless of what it is, submit. And it's actually submitted from the school. When you do the ACT, it gets
Okay.
submitted for that. You don't have to do anything to get it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
So there's a question that says, will the amount we have managed to save in our 529 plan significantly increase our EFC and decrease our chances for any aid?
And that's a really good question. It all depends. Not everybody has to provide asset information on the FAFSA. It depends on the income that you provide that's on the FAFSA. And then it will say, are your assets, these are assets exceed this. Now you're only going to put it for the one student, so not everybody. So it all depends. It could decrease it, but usually it's not significant. Usually assets don't play that much into it. The one thing that I do know that's different this year, there's no asset protection allowance for anybody.
It looks like the other question is, how does the FAFSA work with twins going to college?
Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna fill out the FAFSA for one, and whatever your household size is, you're gonna have two in college, at least both twins on each FAFSA. And then you fill out one and you can transfer the parent information to the other one and then have the other twin fill out their information on it. But it does look at two people going to college. So if there's a household of four, there's four people in the household, it's a mom and dad, and then two brothers or a brother and a sister. It's for the household, two in college. Parents are never listed on the FAFSA as going to college. However, if you have to go back to school for your job, a lot of private schools will do a professional judgment for that. So if anybody else, any parents going to school, contact the school, the students planning to enroll to see if they will count that too. Good questions. So legal guardians, if the student has custody, if you're a custodial parent, it's different than guardianship. So what you need to do, Judy, is talk to the financial aid administrator at the school the student's going to attend. So if you have guardianship over your and I think it's guardianship does count, but it's not. You got a little bit missed here for a second. So if a student's legal guardian, no, it's custody. So anyway, basically contact the financial aid office at the school your choice, because the student could be considered independent, because if they have no contact with their biological parents in any way whatsoever, then they can be considered independent and not have any parent information put on the FAFSA. So definitely contact the financial aid office in the school. I don't know why that threw me, because I answer that question every single day. So yes, only if you have full custody, and the FAFSA will tell you, is the student in legal guardianship? And if they answer yes to that, then they don't provide information. If they had custody, if somebody had custody of them, or vice versa, then they should contact the financial aid office at the school that they're going to attend and find out what they can do to become, to do what they call a dependency override. And if you answer the question about legal guardianship, when it says that, they're going to ask the student to prove that they're in guardianship and not custody, because they are different. Does that make sense, Judy?
I think so.
Or anybody else? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
anybody else? Yeah. These are all great questions. Anybody have any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sandy. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandy, so
you.
much.
Thank
And we
you
will,
all.
for those of you that are still on here, we will actually post this information online. We'll post it to the college counseling Schoology page. We'll post this whole recording as well as all of the slides that Sandy's shared tonight. Oh, here's one more.
Oh, yeah.
If you're retired receiving Kentucky retirement, do you include that as income?
Yes, you do. If you file taxes on whatever is filed on tax returns, you do. And untaxed on that retirement, it's only Social Security, untaxed Social Security that you don't. So anything that you would have to file a tax return, you have to do that. They only address untaxed Social Security that does not have to be reported.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Sandy. We really
You're
appreciate you being here
welcome.
tonight.
No, you all are welcome anytime. Again, if you have questions that you don't feel like you can ask in front of everybody, please email me or call me. I'll be happy to answer any of those. Usually email is easier because I can explain it quickly, and then if you have more questions, you can ask, but phone calls works just as well. So you all have a good evening and nice seeing everybody.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.